When it comes to lost media on my channel, I usually do not format the mystery of episodes in this kind of way. I just talk about the lost media and that's kind of it. But today's episode is an exception because it talks about Sym-Bionic Titan, which was one of my favorite Cartoon Network shows of all time, even though it got snubbed a full run. Originally, the idea for this episode was just going to cover one section of the Titan lore, but there's so much stuff to talk about regarding this show and all the strange things that happened towards its cancellation that I just had to make a big episode talking about all kinds of Sym-Bionic Titan stuff. So this episode is going to cover its cancellation, all the merchandise controversy, and unproduced episodes, which for a time I didn't even know existed. So you might be asking yourself, what is Sym-Bionic Titan? Well, Sym-Bionic Titan was an action show that premiered on Cartoon Network in the early 2010s and focuses on a group of 3 characters who sort of crash land on Earth as they try to escape their war-torn planet. This series was created by Genndy Tartakovsky, who you may know from Dexter's Lab and Samurai Jack, but this show was totally its own style. It had action, it had drama, it had big giant monsters fighting each other. It was one of the best shows on Cartoon Network at the time and one of my most anticipated cartoons of all time. I remember first seeing the show in concept art form at Comic-Con in 2009. It was really early on in those stages and there wasn't much from it. We had to wait quite a while to get a trailer or any real information about the show, but eventually more stuff started to come out and the show was looking really promising. And like I said, I was excited. So many people were excited. It was going to be one of the most hype Cartoon Network action shows that we had seen in quite a long time on the channel. Up until that point, it was mostly Ben 10 superhero cartoons and weird one-off stuff like Fire Breather, so this was really refreshing, and it looked really cool. I remember its original premiere was supposed to be sometime in the summer of 2010, and they actually pushed it back to September. I never found out why exactly they moved the premiere date, but I remember being disappointed because I wanted to watch it so much. But I almost think that sort of added to how excited I was for the show, because at that time I was just going into high school and part of the plotline was that these characters were starting at high school as to try and blend in with society. So in a way I had like a special connection to the show right off the bat. And I watched it every week. It aired on Friday nights and it had a really healthy run for the rest of the year. The first 10 episodes of the series ended right before the new year, and this is when things kinda get weird with it. It went on hiatus until early February of 2011, and when it came back, it was never quite the same show. I remember thinking that some of the episodes didn't really seem to be as high quality as the previous 10 they had showed, but I thought maybe that was just, because we're kind of in like a filler arc or something. But something else was happening with the show that I didn't realize at the time, and it was gearing up for cancellation. Not even a year after its premiere, it was going to be cancelled. Aside from my opinion on the plot of the episodes at that time, they had moved the time slot of the show from Friday nights to Saturday mornings. There weren't a lot of good action shows around Titan to support it in a Saturday morning time slot, and I remember having difficulty getting up that early to even watch the remaining episodes, and soon enough, the show just kinda died. That was it. They wrapped up the plot lines really quickly. It didn't really make sense because they were obviously rushing to get the show done in, these last 10 episodes. And that was pretty much it. Titan was over and I was like, what? I was really disappointed that my new favorite show was now canceled and I wanted to know what exactly happened. So the aftermath of this cancellation was met with a lot of outcry. I was not the only big Sym-Bionic Titan fan out there. There were a lot of people on the Cartoon Network forums, which I was a part of at the time, and you'd see petitions online of all these people wanting Titan to come back. At the time, I was sort of the Cartoon Network pessimist, and I sort of accepted the fact that it was canceled and probably would not come back, but there were a lot of people who believed it could come back, and if there was enough fan outcry, it would. Of course, that never ended up happening, but it's a question of why, and I think after the initial smoke cleared, after everyone was done being angry at Cartoon Network, the reason sort of was looked at and analyzed a little bit more as to what really happened to cause Titan's cancellation. Now, this is something that I have, talked about before, and I've thought about before, and I just cannot wrap my head around it, and that's because the reason doesn't really make sense to me. So, the reason, allegedly, why Titan was cancelled is because Cartoon Network believed that the show was not marketable regarding merchandise. So when it comes to cartoons and stuff like that, merchandise is a big factor in a show's success, and Cartoon Network believed that Titan did not have enough merchandise that could be made for it to make the show profitable and make, all that money from selling plush toys and t-shirts and stuff. So they decided to cut their losses and just kill the show. But that's something I've just never been able to believe for a few different reasons. One of the reasons is because at the time, every other Cartoon Network action show had toy lines and merchandise lines produced for it. While yes, some of these shows didn't do as well as others, it didn't stop them from making toys of these characters. So I'm not really sure why Titan would have been the outlier where they would have looked at it and said, you know what, we're not going to bother with this, when they bothered with Generator Rex and other shows that didn't do very well at that time. Additionally, I remember seeing a lot of discussion about the fact that they did not want to go through with the toy line because one of the characters, Ilana, is a girl, and boys don't want to play with girl toys. That really stretches, I think, considering that all the other action figure lines they had female characters in them, not to mention they could just omit the female characters if they really wanted to, and what, 10-year-old boy wouldn't want to play with a huge mech of the Sym-Bionic Titan? It just doesn't make any sense to me. So for this reason, I've almost come to my own conclusion why Titan was actually killed, and that's because there was something else happening around this time. Genndy, the show's creator, was leaving for Sony Pictures Animation. That was already, said and done when Titan was airing, so I think Cartoon Network decided to cancel it just to cut their ties with the creator and the show and everything about it, rather than have another team pick up and continue it, because that easily could have happened. And considering the fact that Titan was getting competitive ratings to other shows during that time, it doesn't really make sense to me that Cartoon Network would decide, well, this action show is getting really good ratings, but we're not going to bother making merchandise for it because there's one female character in the show. It just doesn't make any sense to me. As far as I know, there were no prototype figures made, there was no merchandise, there was nothing. They just straight up, we're out of here. And that was pretty much it. I don't believe the show had any more reruns on Cartoon Network after that final episode aired, so fast forward a few years to 2012, Adult Swim actually showed Titan in its entirety on Toonami, which was really cool because we hadn't seen it in a year and a half at that point. So people were kind of speculating that this might spark a revival, there might be more interest in the show now, and since it was on Adult Swim, you could do more intense things with the show, because to some extent I felt like the show always was sort of held back by being on Cartoon Network. They could do some more really intense things with the action or the violence, so with it being on Adult Swim, that would have been a perfect fit for it, I think. But unfortunately, that did not happen, and eventually in 2015, the show was written off as a financial failure, although I knew the series had been up on iTunes at one point, so I did a quick Google search and I did find it. It looks like it's purchasable, but I'm not quite sure because I'm not signed in or anything, so maybe if you sign in and actually go to buy it, it won't let you. But I guess you could get some bootleg DVDs because those actually exist now, although the series was released on DVD internationally officially, but you can't really play those DVDs on US players, and also they're really rare apparently, so you probably wouldn't even be able to find one. But the story of Titan doesn't actually end there, because you might be thinking, well, the series had such a short run, but was there anything that was made for it that didn't get aired or produced in that amount of time? And there actually was some stuff. So, in a Reddit AMA with Genndy from what looks like about 7 years ago, someone actually asked him if there was any other episodes he wanted to make for Titan before it was cancelled. Genndy replied and said that there were 10 more episodes written in their entirety that were better than the first 20 we actually got, but unfortunately they never came to be. A couple years ago, I believe I read that Genndy still has these scripts in his archives, but I don't think it's likely we'll ever get to see what they actually contained. I can't believe that he actually had more material that never saw fruition, but also that he admits were better than what we actually got. Like I said earlier though, the second half of Titan wasn't that great and you could kind of tell that it was rushed, but I did enjoy the first half a lot, so it's a wonder what he could have that was better than that. It might be worth trying to track him down and see if he can scan one of these scripts online just so we can see what exactly it contained, because I'm really curious now. And it might be easy to do if he has them readily available. I don't think Genndy is too hard to track down, so it might be worth a shot. As far as I know, he's never discussed what exactly is in these scripts, so in terms of it being lost, yeah, they're kinda lost. We have no idea what these episodes actually contain. To this day, I still miss Titan, and I still wish it could be continued, and it's still one of my favorite Cartoon Network shows of all time. Just because it was so good in the time that it aired and just all the lost potential, just everything about it. Titan really, really is a mystery, and I'll definitely never forget like all the rage and all the anger that was happening on the Cartoon Network forums at the time when the show was canceled, and like how like sad I was, but also I'll never forget like how great the show was when it premiered, and like how excited I was, you know, waiting for the premiere and watching it every week, and just like having great memories like of the first 10 episodes of that show. It was so good. But I guess that largely does it for Sym-Bionic Titan. That was its cancellation, the situation with the merchandise, and also the unproduced episodes, which hopefully someday we'll get to see. It's a show with a lot of lost potential, but still one of my favorite Cartoon Network shows of all time.